Oh, well, hello. How are you? Haven't seen you in a while. So, I had an interesting. As you know, well, actually, welcome to the D. Louise book series. I'm Christina, Kristina. This is where we read books, talk about books, no special effects, no theme music, none of that special stuff the other other podcasters have. And as a result, we have no viewers. Well, except you. And thank you for viewing. And if you could subscribe, I'd appreciate it. If you've already subscribed, much appreciative. I'm trying to hit 200 and it looks like it's like I go up just a smidge and then I go way down. I gain 5 subscribers, then I lose 6 or 7. I guess that's the road. So anyways, I as you know, I like to do my Flashback Monday episodes based on my favorite magazine, Romantic Times book review. And we talk about all the books here and some top sellers from that particular year. We're doing 2009 right now. And I was looking for some books because I like to hold them up. I like to show a physical book. And so I was in the library the other day and I was looking for a couple of books. It's one of the authors that I'm trying to. I need to start going to some more thrift stores. I used to do thrift stores religiously several years back, and I stopped doing it. And then COVID hit, and I got rid of so many books. So now I want to go get them back. And so, anyways, I was in the H's, and I spotted this book, and it was a turn. And usually, I prefer to have product than turned. I'm always itching and bitching and complaining about Barnes and Noble. You go into their store and you're like, oh, do you have this book? And they go, oh, no, I can order it for you. Like, if I wanted to order it, I could have stayed home and saved the gasoline and ordered it. Besides, Barnes and Noble takes 2-3 months for the product to arrive anyway. You're better off ordering it from Amazon. It's cheaper, quicker, and faster. But anyways, I digress. So I was in the H's and I saw this. The Devil's Half Mile. Paddy Hirsch. And you know me, I like to start a series from the beginning. And lo and behold, it was book 1. Lo and behold, there's only 2 books in the series. And usually, I've been trying to expand lately. I usually like to have at least 12 books in a series before I get into it because I want to be able to get to know the character progression from book to book to book to book. But I'm trying to, I'm experimenting here. We're almost finished with Patterson. I'm going to start Victoria Andrews. I'm going to start Beatrice Small's Sky O'Malley series. I'm experimenting, trying to decide what to do with that, if we should read it together or if I should just do the review. And I'm trying to decide. I might do both. We'll see what happens. So anyways, I was looking for I'm trying to find a few books to fill the spots before I go to another series until we finish up Patterson. And I said it, like I said, The Devil's Half Mile. And it was, not only was it book 1, but it was a little history. And if we will also do, when I can find them, because they're hard to find, I don't know why. There was an article in the newspaper the other day that it costs books, libraries, triple to buy an ebook versus a physical book. And I was going to go, well, then buy the physical book. But it costs them, they have to heat and air conditioning the physical book. And my library's got a lot of empty spaces, and I'm kind of pissed. And they've got a lot of empty areas, although they do utilize those areas for group activities at certain points during the year. And they do a big tax season. But, and a lot of people like the ebooks. Now, ebooks are good if you travel, because then you can lodge, especially if you have sight issues, you can lodge the print. So when you're traveling, an ebook is good. And I used to, before it came out, I'd go on vacation, I'd take 10 or 15 books with me. And to God, go to my mother-in-law's, I'd take at least 12 books with me because I could read 2 or 3 a day, depending on what we were doing that day. So, so the Kindle is good for that, but we're digressing here. All right. So, it looked like a murder mystery, and it turns out it's historical, which I like. I did have several pet peeves that may be only me. I'm gonna read the next one. There's only the 2. But it was they may just be me pet peeves. You may read it and not think too much of it. So my first thought was that this was gonna be a murder mystery, and it takes place in New York, which my Gilded Age Victoria Thompson books do. Once and the Sarah Brandt and Frank Malloy books take place, and also the Confederate series she does, also Confederate as bills, as fake money. I can't think of the name of it now. And a few other series that I like to read also take place in New York in the 1900s. So I've been liking those, so I've been reading them. So this takes place in I think 1799, and it's just after the American Revolution. And I had some preconceived notions of what New York looked like at this point, and I may or may not have been wrong on that. But anyways, my biggest issue, and this you may agree or disagree with me. I know it's the time period. I want to come out. I know it's the time period, and I know it was the language used at that point in time. I know the language consists of the time period. I know that. I want to put that out there first. However, because we're reading the book today in this time period, I objected to the N word being used for African Americans in this book. I would have preferred just black. I don't know why. I just did not think it was appropriate for a book of this in today's time. Yes, it's appropriate for the book time, but it wasn't appropriate for reading in this vein. It bothered me tremendously. I just wanted to put that out there. That was one of the big things that I almost put the book down just for that reason. Regardless of how well written it was, I because of the language used to describe certain individuals, I almost put the book down. And without getting into stuff today, I mean, immigrants made this country. Unless you are Native American Indian, you are an immigrant to this country. Face it. The only people that were here were the Native American Indians. They were first. Everybody else is immigrants to this country. And certain individuals had no choice. They came to this country against their will as slaves. And did not realize, because there are certain things in this book that make me think, but it's not 1865 yet. Well, it turns out that New York freed their slaves in 1824. And some people were doing that prior to 1824. So that's why I had to research it a little bit. I didn't go too far into that. That there were some free blacks in New York in after the war, because the British, they had gone to work with the British during the American Revolution, and they were promised freedom after the war. And some people weren't happy with that, but and sometimes a lot of them stayed in New York. A lot of them went west to other places. But so that was just my first biggest pet peeve with the book, that the terminology. It's probably just me, and that was one of the major reasons I almost put down the book. But it turned out to be an interesting book. This man, Justy, his father named him Justice Flanagan. His father was Francis Flanagan. He's been in Europe learning to be a lawyer, and he's been studying dead bodies to learn to tell if a person was garroted or hanged, self-inflicted hanged, somebody else hanged, murder, all this. He's been doing all this forensic stuff. So he's just come back to New York. His father was murdered when he was little, and his uncle paid for his European education. His uncle is one of those big time, I guess you could call it mob leader, maybe in today's terms. He controlled a certain territory in New York. They call it Canvas Town or Tent Town, or Newtown. I know Newtown still exists today, a certain area up there. But so his uncle is one of those kind of boss type peoples. So he's got a little influence in the neighborhood. And so he returns from England from doing his studies. He gets off the boat and he walks into a crowd fishing a dead body out of the water. And her throat's been slit and she's been cut a few times or something like that. So, and the one of the people, a friend of his, who we learn later that he was a friend, tells him that this is the third body this week. They have a little bit of a serial killer going on. They really don't spend too much time on that. It's touched here and there, and it is one of the connected subplots, but it's not the main plot of the story. It's one of the subplots. So the main plot is that his father was murdered, and his father was supposedly involved in the stock market crash. Now, when I think about the stock market crash, I think of the one in 1929. I did not know that there was another one in 1792. And apparently they had not established too many rules at this juncture. It was just starting out. And I had to Google this, and thank you, Wikipedia, for the extra information, most appreciative. The Panic of 1792 was a financial credit crisis that occurred during the months of March and April of 1792, precipitated by the expansion of credit by the newly formed Bank of the United States, as well as by rampant speculation on the part of William Duer, Alexander Macomb, and other prominent bankers, and their colleagues attempted to drive up prices of United States debt securities and debts and bank stock. But when they defaulted on loans, prices fell, causing a run on banks. Simultaneously, tightening of credit by the Bank of the United States served to heighten the initial panic. Secretary of Treasury Alexander Hamilton was able to deftly manage the crisis by providing banks northeastern United States with hundreds of thousands of dollars to open markets of purchased securities, which allowed the market to stabilize in May 1792. In December 1791, the price in securities began to increase once again, and the eventual crash in March 1792 caused many investors to panic and withdraw their money from the Bank of the United States. One of the primary causes of the sudden run on the bank was the failure of a scheme created by William Dewar, Alexander Macomb, and other bankers in the winter of '79. Dewar and Macomb planned to use large loans to gain control of the debt security market because other investors needed their securities to make payments on stocks. And when you read the whole thing, it turns out to be a very early Ponzi scheme. You invest in my company for $2, and then I get Joe Blow here to invest in my company for $4. And then I go, oh, look, you've doubled your profit, give you the $4. And you're like, no, this is great. I'm going to give you the $4 back, and then you can double it again. So then I get Joe down the block here to invest for $8. And then I'll pay Mr. $4 back. And he's like, oh, this is good. I got my money back. Or you give him $8. Here, take the $8. And it works like that. And you keep paying lower people off when you get the higher amounts, a Ponzi scheme. And so obviously that particular way of doing business and scheming has been around for a lot longer than I was aware of. So he gets off the boat, and his first determination is to find out who really killed his father, because he was too young to do anything at that juncture. When he found his father, he was only 14, but now he's been away for 8 years, and he wants to talk to Mr. William Dewar. He knows Mr. Dewar is in jail. So after coming up the boat, he goes to jail to see William Dewar, and they tell him that they vehemently deny him access. And then he pulls the lawyer card and says, I'm a lawyer, blah, 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 blah. And then they confess that the gentleman has died. And not only has he died, but they let him go home for the last month of his life to die at home with his wife. So this makes Justy angry that he missed talking to Dewar and that they allowed Dewar to die at home. Because he's totally convinced that his father Francis was involved with Dewar and that he owed quite a few debts. And we do not find the truth of that statement until the end of the book. So you have to read the whole book to get the end of, unless you want to read the last couple chapters, then skip ahead. So he goes and he runs into an old friend that this was not a girlfriend, but she was a girl, but she was half his age. So she was a little girl when he left. Now she's an adult. And you know that when I get enthusiastic about books, I have to share them with you. And he's telling this girl that he studied the law in England and France. Their constables go after lawbreakers, especially murderers and thieves, and then they try to bring them to trial. I spent a summer with them in Paris to see how they investigate crimes and suspicious deaths. It was fascinating. They have a whole library there full of pictures and sketches of showing how people died. And the girl says it sounds like ghouls. And then he goes to see, oh, I wanted to give it just a little brief description here. Canvas, they walked in silence down a shallow hill towards what looked like an aftermath of a battle. Smoke from hundreds of fires hung over a forest of grimy tents and wooden shacks, and the night air hummed with the sound of thousands of people crammed into the few acres of land between the new town and the river. Canvas Town, a tent city populated by free, and I'm not using that N word, runaway slaves, deserters, criminals, and the desperate poor. It was slowly being pushed north by developers who were throwing up cramped tenements and narrow townhouses, like the one Carrie stopped beside, a three-story house on the corner of Mud Lane, still wreathed in scaffolding. And Carrie, this girl tells him to go to Mrs. Flanagan's to get a room for rent. And then he goes to see his uncle Flanagan, his uncle Ignatius Flanagan, who, like I said, controls the area. And I was just a little tickled pink. In Hamilton, in the play Hamilton, when King George is singing "You'll be back," blah blah blah, that whole song. Well, he has words with his uncle, and his uncle's a little ticked off because his nephew's being really good at two shoes. And the uncle says, "You'll be back, and not just for your tackle." The bull's eyes were narrow and his face was set hard. Justy could smell the meat on his breath. "You're young and you think you're invincible, but one day you'll need something from me, from my world. Then we'll find out who you really are." And I was like, okay. So he starts investigating his father's death, and he's ruffling some feathers. And he meets this guy. He goes to this guy that was a friend of his father's. And he does not know when he goes to talk to the guy. He asks the guy, "Who was involved with my father during this stuff? Who were the partners?" And this particular bite kind of hedges it a little. He's telling the friend of his father's cotillion is telling him that speculation on a large scale is dangerous. It pushed us to the brink several times in the last decade alone. He launched himself into a gap between two carriages, stepping left and right to avoid the pools of urine and piles of dung. And that's why we need rules, you see, to be sure no single reckless individual can endanger the entire system with the stock market. And then they talk about, if I can find the spot, I didn't write. A trader buys low, sells high, and makes sure he gets a sniff of the fish before it's wrapped. That's what my mammy taught me. He paused. When I was wee. Collie's eyes flash. You got a spine, I see. So he tells people Flanagan, Mr. Cotillion decides to work for Cotillion to earn some money and help him find other people that were surrounding his father during his father's death. And so then my husband, being a coin person, Justice is paying people with eagles. So I had to look it up. And we know eagles today, the coins, and they're expensive coins. But in the Mint Act of 1792 required that an eagle be on the reverse side of all coins larger than a dime. So that's interesting. Something we did not know. And we find another body, and there are still some British in town, and there's still some slavery going on. And he investigates he helps the cops investigate the murders. And they're called watchers at this juncture. They're not called police as of yet, or constables as of yet. They're called the watch. And one of the Jacob Hayes, wants Justice to come work for him and help him out, because Justice has seen all this stuff in France, and he learned all these information, and he can help them solve cases. So he gets in a lot of trouble. He's interfering. He's stirring up the pot of information that certain people would like to see buried, that if gets known, they'll end up going to prison. What prison there is at this juncture, if any of stuff can be proved. So we've got the the serial killer murdering all these women. We've got, did you know that there was no morgues in the city at this juncture? They used almshouses. This one guy used almshouses because it used to be a rich person's house, and they had a wine cellar, and the wine cellar was a good place to put the bodies. So that was a little interesting fact there. So we've got our main plot of him investigating his father's death. And then we got the subplot of the women's murders, and they were all tied together. And all this stuff with the girl, Carrie, who has some issues with herself, issues that will interfere with some of the investigation at a later juncture. But our cast is small, which is good. You don't have to, get to know too many new characters. And it would be nice to see we get some regulars as books go on. But it's good to come into a series where your cast is small, and then you can increase as you go on. So that's good. So I wasn't overwhelmed with characters either. So we have Justice, Flanagan, Lars, a friend of his, and also he has some information on the father. Carrie O'Toole, the female friend that we talked about. Jarlath Contillion, the lawyer he goes to work for. He used to work with his dad. His landlady, Jacob Hayes, the mayor's marshal, part of the watch group. Jeremiah Kimball, a former judge of New York who is a little fearful for his life. And then we have Ignatius Flanagan, his uncle, and Sarah. We don't meet Sarah Boswell till towards the end, and she's just the housekeeper. So we'll see what happens with her. So it was an interesting discovery going down row H in my library, and we'll have to check out the next one and see how it goes. So please have a good day, and please like and subscribe. Thank you.